Greetings everyone and welcome to another edition of the BlastCast. I am Jarvis. With me always is a proud owner of a Retaliator Lightning Dragon. Alright, and of course this week's 3.0 news. No real updates, so all I can say is General Valissimo Francisco Franco is still dead. And around the verse this week, well, it's pretty basic really. We're still underneath the ultimate dry spell right before the Citizen Con, so it's going to be a two-part series on the exciting update of Legacy Armor to the new system. Now, if you're into game design and into art and things like that, it can be a pretty interesting watch. But I don't know, to me, it's one of those things that they're really looking for something to do, and they're splitting it out over 2 episodes. So, if you want to watch about 25 minutes or 20 minutes of them, making the armor from the old system into the armor new system. It's all there for you. It does look good. I'll definitely give them points. They've done some really good work, but not very compelling. Now, what was compelling this week was the new Shipyard series, breaking down the direction of all the different functions and features of the game coming up. So I'll have a link down below to the forum post for that. And in there, you'll find all the links for the appropriate discussion, everything from careers and roles, all the way on down through to ordnance hardpoints. So let's go ahead and get into this a little bit section by section and cover the things that kind of caught my eye. They had a ship career / role chart that came out, and where they listed what division underneath career, what roles are underneath every part of them. And one of the questions they had here that was listed is, why has my ship changed role from what it was introduced as? And the answer was, we have tried to ensure that all ships remain as close to their originally described roles. However, a few may seem to have changed, but this has more to do with a vague or nebulous original description. As development has progressed, a lot of the older ships had very unique roles which do not fit nicely in with the new current game design and need to be subtly pushed in various directions to better fit their intended role. So I think that clears it up pretty well. But yeah, there's all sorts of, you have new variants, you have all these different things coming out in ships, you had complete redesigns. So yeah, there's nothing that pretty much was or is the same as it once was. So they went into ship mass. Now this is what we were talking about a while ago, kind of a digital immersion, if you will. Now what they do is they find out the volume of the entire craft, and then they subtract out the interior space. And there's some modifiers on there. The mass is modified by the materials, species construction, and its design role. If you have, for example, a Xeon fighter, it of course will be using design specifications of Xeon. It's a combat role, and the materials that the Xeon use. So all those will be modifiers that will set the final mass value. Now, there was a question on this, is, will changing the item mass of my ship intentionally or through damage actually have an impact on its flight? And they said yes it will, though not immediately in Alpha 3.0. So this is something that's still down the road. So we can expect all of our ships at that point in time to have another kind of a change to the way that they fly once this gets incorporated into the system. More changes coming. Alright, and they had an introduction to the new ship matrix. And basically breaking down ship sizes from vehicles all the way up to capitals, and the kind of ships you would see within that chart. But what caught my eye on this was when they showed...
Is that my Orion is a capital class and your Reclaimer is only large. Suck it!
Well, that too. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, that's kind of strange, because I'm pretty sure the Orion and the Reclaimer are pretty similar in size.
No, the Orion's bigger.
Well, I know it's longer, but it's not like as tall or wide.
That's Lightning always trying to brag about how long his ship is.
Well, I mean, the Polaris is in here as well. So.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I do have the Polaris. I'm good with that. No, but what caught my eye was when they showed the technical overview, and they showed the Reclaimer, and basically what they're doing is they're showing the intent that they have for how these ships are going to maneuver or what their speed is. And when you look on the right on this image, what you see is when you look at the X, Y, and Z axis rotation, the Y axis, which I assume they mean your main engines, it accelerates at 8 meters per second. And the X axis, which is left and right, is 7.3 meters per second. Basically, the left and right thrusters provide 92.5% of the acceleration values of those two big main engines. This goes back to that disconnect I keep talking about, where nearly every direction has very, very close or very little differences at all between the main engines. What's the point of the main engines at all? This is a disconnect that they keep having in the game because they need to make sure that their ships can have this hard left and right juking as much as possible in order to deal with, needing to dodge the pixel accuracy of interactive mode. And of course, at speeds of this rate, the ship isn't dodging anything, obviously, at its size and moving at a massive 80 meters per second in SCM mode. But it's the general thought process that the strafing needs to be as equally powerful as those gigantic engines. That just doesn't make any sense to me. What's the point of the main engine? I just don't get it. So there was a question here: is why are the SCM/AFB set at certain values and restricted? The SCM values are built around where we want each ship to perform from a design perspective, and ensure that the ship can still do maneuvers as expected and within G-force limits. The higher these SCM speeds are, the harder it is for a compelling combat to occur, with the majority of players doing little more than shooting at blips, instead of having exciting skill-based dogfighting where you can see your opponents. Now, there's something good said in here, is setting maneuverability within G-force limits. And they're once again talking about compelling combat, like the idea like they had in 2.6 of having ships really close together. You see this repeated theme because you can go all the way back to the original Wing Commander, where ships fought relatively close, in fact often so close that they filled up your entire screen. So there's this intent here, but if they try this without once again dealing with the issue at hand of these two separate control schemes, one that lets you aim pretty much perfectly, and the more perfect the slower it gets. Well, if they want to do this, it's not going to work. It's like trying. They have a house, and they want to have a basement in this house, but they have a solid concrete foundation, and that's your pacing limit. It's your floor. The only way you're going to be able to build a basement is if you lift up that house, tear out that foundation, dig a hole, line it up with concrete, drop back down. You need to get rid of that floor. You need to get rid of that foundation and change it so you can go down. So if they have this intent, they need to address, once again, the other half of the issue, which is gunnery. And overall, looking at this report, I didn't see that really being addressed. Well, we'll get to that here in just a little bit. Alright, and then they talked about ship thrusters. And the good thing about this whole area, basically CIG basically kind of admitted that their thruster values were way off. And Lightning and I covered that in our BlastCast 95, digging deep into the Star Citizen's core flight model. We had showed through Kerbal, actually Lightning did, because he's the Kerbal guy, where he had taken the weight values of the Hornet and then attached the thrust values that we had in their matrix, and then more realistic values, and showed the disparity. It was huge.
The Hornet would blow up on the launch pad. I'm sure you have footage of that.
Oh yeah, that's all going in here. Yeah, it would blow up from re-entry heat taking off. And so it's one of those things that, yes, there's some acknowledgement here. The thruster values are completely and totally insane, and that's great. That's a first important step. And the other one, of course, talking about the G-forces, because that's been a big issue for a while. In fact, there is someone who is MHE. That's his call sign. I wish I knew how to pronounce that, but I just call him MHE. He's been putting together a very lofty document talking about G-forces, his career as a pilot, and that will hopefully be coming out soon. And when it does, we'll be discussing it. But it's one of those things that pacing can also be set through realistic applications of G-forces on pilots as well. That's one of those other factors. It's like setting up certain boundaries to work within. Now, when they list the thrusters here, I thought it was kind of weird. They call the main engines main thrusters, which, oddly enough, seems to go with the mindset that you could lateral strafe nearly as fast as the main engines, because they're not engines; they're main thrusters. For going forward, and they lose a little R for retro, and a V for VTOL. Now, I found this interesting. What it looks like is that for the large ships, say like the Caterpillar, I always wondered how that thing was going to land. And they may have to go back and retool some of these models a little bit and add some thrusters just for VTOL purposes or whatnot. So the large ships, something like a Caterpillar, would use fixed thrusters in order to stay aloft. One of the ships I felt that still needs a major revamp in one regard is the Connie, because it has those fans. Those VTOL fans. And I've looked at them since day one. It's like, what do you do if the planet doesn't have an atmosphere? Like, what do you do in that case?
You die.
Oh my gosh, we're always thinking the same thing.
It's creepy.
Don't we have to knock on something or whatever?
Knock on wood?
Yeah.
I don't know if this is... The particle board is...
Yeah, particle board.
So.
There we go, we're good.
Yeah, there we go.
But they've also distinguished the two types of maneuvering thrusters. Fixed, which provide a more instant thrust output, and they don't need to align to a vector first. They allow for very quick response and high agility, but you need to have more of them. You need to have a minimum of 12 on a ship to align with the movement in 6 degrees of freedom. The gimbaled ones, I think those are a minimum of 8, though they don't say that here. They provide a more flexible vector of thrust. And they're slower to move, they're slower to react, but in some regards, they actually might be more accurate because you can adjust these gimbals to exactly the direction that you need. So a little bit of trade-off there. So it's interesting to see them finally distinguish these two. Because when the game first showed the demo, and they talked about how the gimbals were moving and whatnot on the gimbal thrusters, it seemed like I hope at some point in time, I really do, that we can go back like that Hornet and I can get rid of those weird gimbal thrusters and like put some like fixed all over it, because I bet you that ship would fly way better.
Especially if they added a realistic delay to the gimbal thrusters, where you have like even if it was half a second of delay, because it has to move into place.
Well, that's what it says here, is that they need to rotate to align themselves to the desired vector before providing thrust. So,
which is not what they're doing right now.
Right now they just flip all over the place. They're always wiggling and moving. Even when you're like trying to fly, even when you're stationary in space, you'll watch them like wiggling around. I think that's something they're going to have to address. But you're not putting any input on, and you watch them just kind of shake and shimmy, and like you watch thrust coming out. I'm like, why? I'm already stationary. You can stop thrusting. It's space. I'm not going anywhere. But obviously, those are things that have to be worked on down the road. I'm not that picky. I get that that's like cleanup work, and that's fine. The question they had here is, if thrust ratings are not displayed, will they ever come back? In some form, yes. Whilst we've removed them from the ship matrix for now due to the above reasons, we have plans to bring back a more useful form of them with ongoing thruster and flight model updates in future patches. In part, to deal with the somewhat overpowered maneuvering thrusters that have become commonplace with the changes to the flight model in 2.6. There's the little bit of a statement about overpowered maneuvering thrusters I was talking about. Well, somewhat overpowered is kind of funny. It's like saying a 44 Magnum is somewhat more powerful than a 22.
Only slightly.
Just not. Yeah, right. But yeah, it's. I think what they're going to be looking at doing, and for a while now, I never understood this. In some regards, I get the idea that they want to have TR1s, TR2s, TR3s, but it might have been a bit too early. I would be more interested in like what this thruster is built on this ship here, and it works within this certain range, as long as the range works within a value that falls within those G-force constraints, or has a certain pacing that you just don't set it to like 1,000,000 kilonewtons because reasons. So yeah, I think it's more realistic to just set those at a later date. In fact, just give them performance ranges, and then you could have alternate parts or upgrades or modifications that can be made within those ranges. So that's fine. I'm completely fine with that. Weapon hardpoints. Well, really, still nothing changed here whatsoever. I mean, I looked at this and I didn't see any real indications that anything's changing. Just how they're marking it, mostly when it comes to turrets and things like that. They show on this diamond the size and then how many guns are on it. And on a turret, basically, it is the one size smaller than, I mean, the weapon size is one size smaller than the turret size. So if it says I can show you the one on the Hornet here on the right where it says 3 in the bottom and 2 at the top, but that means it's got 2 guns on a size 3 turret, so that should actually be 2 size 2s, and it's got the chin one, which also carries 2 guns to size 2 turret, which means it's 2 size 1s, and that lines up with what the Super Hornet actually has. I still think that's a bit convoluted. I think people initially looking at that are going to be confused to some degree still. I think they should just say, you know, this is a turret, this is how many guns it has, and this is the size of the guns. Let's leave it at that. You know, just say it should just say, you know, 2 guns, size 2, 2 guns, size 1, and just keep it simple. That's still, in my opinion, a little unclear for people coming in who haven't played the game before, or aren't familiar with it, or what the ships have. And speaking of turrets,
womp womp womp.
Man versus remote. Now, man turrets will have larger guns, you know, unless you fly a Retaliator, then you'll f yourself. Right, Lightning?
Pretty much.
And the remote turrets will be a little bit smaller, and there's 0 size on a Retaliator. And,
yeah, we're introducing the new 0 size gun. The Pro, they can shoot pretty much unlimitedly. Con, they do no damage. Come standard with every Retaliator.
Yeah.
Buy yours today. Shipping and handling may apply.
But like you can't, as far as turrets go, you cannot put an unmanned turret on a manned turret location, and you can't take a turret off one ship that's not made for it and put it onto another, which is kind of a given. Now, you can actually either put an NPC in a manned turret to have the AI through an NPC run it, or you can use an AI program, or what it's called is this idea called blades. It's a kind of upgrade slot that's going to be installed into your ship. Now, your ship will have a limited number of slots for these blades, so if you want to have automated turrets, you're actually going to start foregoing other maybe modifications or upgrades to your ship to have those. I like this system because it brings in real choice. I like things that have choice and consequence, and this is one of them. I think this is a great idea. Once again, I'm not all negative when it comes to Star Citizen. Certain things I love. When I love them, I love it. I love it. I love that. That's great. Good job, guys. That's fantastic. So what the thing with the blades is you can actually set not only to be automated, but you can have a particular blade that's set a functionality. So if you want to, you could set your turrets, a turret, multiple turrets, whatever, to not only being automated, but to be set to things like point defense. And in certain circumstances, I could see where that's going to be just ideal. Like if you're with your Retaliator, let's assume that someday they get the turrets up to size 3, which they should be.
That will never happen.
It should be. That's a military bomber. Come on. And so, okay, let's assume though we live in happy world, and that happens. So we go ahead and you know, you take, okay, I'm going to take one turret on the bottom back turret, or whatever. Actually, there's 2 in the bottom left and right. Okay, well, whatever. We'll take a couple of the turrets. We'll make them, you know, deal with point defense, and just deal with incoming missiles. I mean, that would just be incredible. I would have like maybe 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom, or something like that. But the point is it gives you some sort of way to deal with incoming tracking weaponry, and I really like that idea. That's fantastic, because one of the things that sold me on the Constellation Phoenix a long time ago, I don't own it, but I wanted to get it, was the fact that it did come with what they called back then size, or class 9s, or whatever,
which were the point defense.
Yeah, exactly. It was the only Connie that had that. But having something like this means if you want, you can turn your Connie's turrets just in the countermeasures which would be terrible because the fact that the big engines block what would be coming up your rear end anyway. But it's a thought that counts in this case. Now, there are some ships that have what they call a twin link kind of gimbal mounts that they kind of setting now the idea of being remote turrets. And remote turrets, what that is in the game is that they're operated through a station if they're not automated. Like we had talked about with the original Retaliator concept of the seats that were behind the cockpit to run the turrets. But the thing is that, so some of these have had them change. This kind of brings up some interesting questions. For example, they have the Mustang series that has a chin turret that's going to be considered a remote turret. The Hornet series, the Canard and Ball turret. The F8's rear turret, the 85X's belly turret, the Ursa Rover's top turret, Reliant wing turret, Terrapin nose turret, Redeemer, that one didn't even list because I don't think they know what they're doing without ship yet. Hull series nose turret, and Caterpillar, the command module turret. Now, the question I have on this is because these are normally run by, well, the only thing you can really run it with right now is interactive mode. So what I'm trying to figure out is, does this mean if we're dealing with a blade system or whatnot, are we going to be automating gimbals through these blades? And if that's the case, then why have manually run gimbals at all? Why don't you just have that be part of the actual system? Why have one group of players have to use blades and reduce the amount of upgrades they have on their ship, and one group that can just use them anytime they want? So, is this an intent of change? Is it an intent of they don't know? I don't know. I look at this and it's a little vague, and I would like them to actually address this issue. Because some of these ships, like, we have the Hornet and you have the ball turret. The guy sitting in the back can run the ball turret. But what about the standard Hornet? In that case, it's only interactive mode. Same thing with the Terrapin. You have the nose turret. Well, there's a guy that sits in the back doing the scanning. Does he get to run the turret on that, or is it once again just the interactive mode thing on that? So some clarification there would definitely be welcome. And lastly, they addressed the idea of ordnance, which was basically how missiles are defined, and missile racks. Basically, you can turn a size 4 slot into a slot that carries 8 size 1 missiles instead of just one size 4 missile. So I like the variation on here, and I think it's important to give players choices. Of course, we've had missile racks for a little while, but this is nice to see them kind of just lay them out in a very easy to understand format that makes sense. Now, they took the rocket pods, I guess, out of the game, and they plan to be bringing those back into the future. I'll throw some images up here. They're looking at other functions that might go where you would have a rocket pod as well. Things like the distortion field generators, which is kind of a smaller version of what the Avenger Warlock would do as far as EMP. Now, what I'd like to know is, when they talk about this distortion field generator, is it something that you fire off like a missile? Like a EMP missile? Or is it just a pod on your ship that disables your ship and their ships like the Avenger, which I think is a terrible idea, by the way. I mean, I love the Avenger Warlock. It's just that, why does it disable my ship? Wouldn't you think your own systems be protected from that kind of thing? Like a preemptive shutdown, and for a much faster reboot than what you used it on, or something. I don't know. That's a technical detail that's got to be worked out. Things added to those rocket pod slots, like fuel pods or mines, things like that. I think mines in space is a terrible idea. I've never liked the idea. We're going to mine an area that has infinite up, infinite down, and see if we can keep someone from getting here. Good luck with that.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. It only works in Deep Space Nine when you have like one point of entry through a wormhole. Other than that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Alright, so looking at all this, Lightning, do you have any thoughts about any of this?
I want missiles on my Retaliator.
Yeah, that's true. That'd be nice to have those back. I have no idea what happened with that. All right, so
I mean, I don't even know if you can look it up anymore. I mean, here
I looked it up. I looked up this week. It's not listed anymore.
So if you go to the Star Citizen wiki, this is where it has like the oldest information, And I could have swore in the very beginning it said that it had missile launchers. And this is back when they had upgrade capacity. It has 8 upgrade capacity. You remember those guys? But yeah, I mean, like, some of the stuff is like, it doesn't even list missiles even on here. It says it's got, even then, size 1. They've had size 1 weapons on the Retaliator since launch, since initial concept art. But I swear, when they did the original pitch, they talked about missiles.
You're not the only one. Look, I've gotten into several discussions. In fact, even in the comments down below, when we said it didn't have the missile launchers anymore, just the torpedoes, there were several people who commented like, "When did this happen?" Because they backed, but they haven't probably played the game yet, and they were completely shocked that it didn't have missile launchers anymore.
Yeah, because
so you're not out of your head, because I remember seeing they were retractable. They were like little doors that opened up on the bottom.
And they gave it to the Connie instead, because the Connie needs more missiles.
Yeah, and also remember back at the Retaliator, you got it because it had a big captain's bed with a big view on it. Yeah,
the pimp bed. I'm sure.
The pimp bed. That's right. Because that was the thing. Is that so? Yeah, I mean, of course, obviously things change, but to strip out a gigantic chunk of ordnance on a ship like that is a massive kick in the groin. So no, I mean, it's maybe hard to find, but you're not alone there, because I've had several discussions with people said, who haven't played yet. Anyway, so yeah, it is what it is. There's always changes coming in development. Now, overall, I think a lot of this stuff is interesting. It's good to see them considering these things, at least laying it out there. Agree or disagree, I think it's a good idea for them to put these thoughts out there, so at least as a community, we can discuss what we like or don't like about...
Apartment module. That's what it was called.
Okay. And that was where you could basically go ahead and swap it out for missiles and stuff like that.
No. That was just it was like a captain's quarters basically. It had it's a bench, and there was like a window, and there was like a queen size bed, which has been divided. Yeah,
because you said you were to get your Kirk on.
No, I don't remember that. I think you said that.
Maybe I said that.
I think you said that.
Okay,
but I mean, what they changed it into is better. I mean, now it's a medical bay and a bathroom. So yeah, I mean, sure, it's better than what it was before.
Yeah.
But like even the layout is totally different. Like in this one, it had a hallway down the center, just the center, and now
the torpedoes fired from the sides. As I said, get out there. Discuss these things you're seeing, what you like, what you don't like, or what you want clarification on. I think that's more of the issue. It's good to have these kind of things defined, but in some ways, I feel that a lot of them leave more questions than they give answers. I guess you could say that the road to wisdom is first admitting that you don't know anything. And after reading this, I know nothing. I am Schultz. I know nothing.
The wise man knows that he knows nothing.
Exactly. So anyway, that's about everything for this week's BlastCast, guys. Not too much else to say. I guess the next one we'll be talking about CitizenCon stuff and see what happens. It looks like they're going to be doing a more professional kind of situation this year. Hopefully they use some pre-recorded game footage. Don't get me wrong. I like seeing the live stuff to a degree, because I know that they're building stuff. I know that they're doing stuff, but just to bypass any aggravation or things like that they have to deal with, I think they should just pre-record these demonstrations, and then just, if they want to show us some stuff live afterwards for fun, fine. But let's have a nice smooth, so we don't have to restart something in the middle. It's really time for CIG to get that professional level up on these broadcasts, because more and more people are looking at this game. They need to treat it like they're like for lack of better terms, a AAA developer.
AAA.
I hate using that term, but I'm using the Jim Sterling context because that's the only one that satisfies my inner hate. So anyway, guys, as I said, that's about everything in this week's BlastCast. We will catch you next time.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.